So whereas if you're using Intacct, all those graphs, reports, everything, consolidations, all happens in one place, especially if you're grouping all the reports. You run one report and everything is spewed out, even with the documentation in the front. And then you can put it in and email it out to your client.
Welcome to the AI in Accounting podcast. Now, here's your host, Joshua Feinberg of Vic.ai.
Joshua Feinberg here from the AI in Accounting podcast, and I'm being joined today by Jayce Kadire, who's the Director of Financial Accounting Advisory Services at MGO CPA in the Bay Area. Welcome, Jayce.
Thank you. Thanks for having me here.
Hey, thanks so much for joining me. So the focus of what the main thing I wanted to speak with you today is about your favorite tips around Sage Intacct. But before we roll up our sleeves and get into some of the best practices, can you take our viewers, take our listeners through a little bit about your background? Did you always want it to be in accounting? Did you go to school for accounting? How did you end up in your current career role? How does that fit in with your firm at large?
I guess my background in schooling is in accounting. I got my undergrad in accounting. I got my master's in corporate finance. So I've always been in the corporate world. Initially started out my public accounting career in a regional firm in New York, and then came out to California some time ago, and I've been working in industry for quite some time, particularly in the medical device and life sciences industries. And then I recently made a jump back into public accounting when I joined MGO, and I've been going full speed ahead here ever since.
That's awesome. So you're in part of the advisory services group. How does that fit in with the rest of the firm? Are there other groups that audit tax? Where does that kind of reside in the whole kind of framework with MGO?
Yeah, MGO is an interesting firm where we are both accounting professionals and provide consulting services as well. So we initially started out in, I believe, like 1987 as a sole practice, state and local tax, state and local governments. And we provide both audit and tax services to a lot of different types of entities. Particularly, we started out with the local governments, particularly California. So our corporate office was in Sacramento, and we recently relocated the corporate office to Century City, Los Angeles area. And we have offices all over the country, East Coast, all over California, and in the East Coast as well. So New York, Florida, Chicago, and we also have an office in India as well. So we're about 500 plus professionals doing audit, tax, and advisory services. And that's where my division is.
Awesome. So shifting gears a little bit more to the tactical part of the software, what got you originally involved in Sage Intacct? What was your first foray? Was it when you were still working in private industry? Did you first learn and get involved with Sage Intacct when you joined MGO?
I first got involved with Sage Intacct when I joined MGO. The reason why we were involved with Sage Intacct is because they are a cannabis-friendly ERP system, and MGO has been supporting the cannabis hemp industry for quite a number of years. And we have over 400 cannabis and hemp industry clients. And so Sage is one of the ERP systems that work with that industry without restrictions.
So it's really interesting when I speak with a lot of people for these podcast interviews. A lot of times the value of vertical expertise comes up a lot as being especially helpful when you're providing outsourced services. In this particular case, though, it's not only the expertise within your own team, it's the SaaS platform that you've built the advisory services around.
That's right. So I have a lot of experience implementing NetSuite in industry. So when I was in the medical device industry, I've implemented NetSuite twice at two different types of entities. One was a consumer electronics company, and the other ones were medical device companies. So I'm quite familiar with those types of industries. When they came into MGO, they were using Sage, and I quickly got up to speed. And the vertical is a very important one for us because of the fact that we do support a lot of the cannabis type industries.
So what do you say to somebody either on your team or out at a client site who's never used Intacct before? What's your favorite tip for a beginner or somebody that's just getting started?
My favorite tip would be something related to reporting because I love reports. I like to spend more time analyzing than actually looking at doing the actual work, right? So one of my favorite tips would be to actually look at the creating of group reports. So you, at the end of the month, after you're done with closing your books, all you have to do is run one set of reports, and all your P&L, balance sheet, cash flow statement, and any kind of management reports and equity statements come all out at once. And so you can spend more time, and you can just bundle it together and send it off to the client versus running individual reports, putting it together, creating it in Adobe or Excel, and then having to send it off. So this way, it all comes out on one report. So I would highly say, if you're a beginner, start looking into the group reports feature in Sage.
Does that take a lot of work for somebody who's new to configure? Is that something out of the...
Actually not. Sage is fantastic in the reporting tools, and they actually have a lot of sample systems that they have, templates that they have, and you could, if it doesn't meet your exact need, you can actually modify it. And so you start with the templates and make it your own as you go. So that's why I really like the flexibility of the reporting as a group.
So group reporting, yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I know even what the kind of work that I do, reporting can burn a ton of time if it's not set up efficiently, like hours a month. Yeah, and the more time you free up, the more time you can spend talking about what's in the reports too.
That's correct. More time analysis and less time actually, generating the reports, right? So yeah.
Now, at the other end of the spectrum in terms of knowledge, expertise, what do you say to somebody that you might meet at a conference like Sage Partner Summit or something like that, or Advantage, where you are speaking with someone who's been using Intacct for years, and maybe over a drink you're saying, hey, Jayce, have you ever seen this before? Or maybe you're talking to a product manager and you're sharing more stories. What's your favorite tip for a power user expert?
Well, I think they should definitely try to customize all the forms within Sage Intacct has to offer, such as sales orders or customized invoices, just so that you can generate them on the fly and also get them out without having to modify so every single customer items separately, right? So every time you get a particular order for some other product that you have selling, or you're doing that kind of stuff, you want to make sure that you have a customized form for it already, so you can quickly get to it, use it, and send it out, versus spending time modifying an existing report at that time. So they have a lot of templates that you can utilize to modify it and to make it your own. So if you have several versions of the same kind of order entry forms or invoices, that you have different templates for different types of products that you have, or different types of services, this way you can modify it and you can easily name it and later on find it, so you can get that out as quickly as possible without having to delay the time.
Is this something that you work on as part of onboarding with new clients, where you go through and help them decide how to build these forms, customize the forms ultimately so they get what they need out of the reports?
And that's correct. And since we are outsourced provider, we handle most of the accounting back-end office for a lot of our clients. And so we'll help manage all these items, and then we'll speak with them regarding what they need and what we need to get out on a timely basis, so that when there is a request that comes in, we can quickly turn it around, and also saving the client time and money, right? So it's perfect.
Have you noticed?
And the other big thing that I really love, talking about it over drinks at a bar with somebody who's been using Intacct for quite some time, is the dashboards, right? I simply love the dashboards. And the CFO dashboard, the controller's dashboard, the accounting manager dashboard, and the CEO dashboards, they all have specifics, and you can modify it to your own. And they're a fantastic way to get a really wow out of the client, because you have so much different information, and you give them access, and they log in the morning, and they have all the tools that they need to make the decisions for the day. So it's a quite an interesting tool, and I'm surprised like a lot of people don't use it. So that's one of my big proponents of that Sage has been doing for many, many years that I really love, is the dashboards. So
the forms, customizing the forms drives more efficient reporting, and you can do the reports as a group to save a lot of time, and then you have dashboards. What's kind of the relationship between where reports end and dashboards begin? Where is there overlap? Is that something that you think about together when you're doing onboarding?
Well, yeah, that's something that we always have to look at when we onboard a client. What's important to them? Some clients, they only have a few transactions, but they're high dollar transactions. So they will always want to see exactly what's outstanding, what they can collect, what we should be concentrating on. So those are when the dashboards come in really handy, because they're real time information.
Oh, okay, yeah, that makes total sense. What do you see as one or two of the big mistakes across the board, regardless of level and experience, that people are tending to make with Intacct, that if you could bake into the product and magically fix, it would save a lot of headaches, stress, aggravation, save a lot of time, or just some kind of preventative tips that you'd walk new users through?
Yeah, I don't know if there's anything that we can fix. I'm really happy with Sage currently, and they're constantly coming out with new revisions, and also they take advice to heart. So when you have a support ticket and you're requesting features, they actually do listen, and they actually implement those, I've noticed, with new releases. So I'm like super happy with that. The one thing that I have noticed that a lot of people don't realize is that because we are an SIIP partner, we get really great pricing, and Sage is not just for a mid-tier firm, right? You can actually start out when your startup phase with Sage and then grow and turn on modules as you see fit, right? Whereas, so you're not stuck with QuickBooks, and you're not there just living in the QuickBook world, and all of a sudden, you grow way too quickly, and then now you're looking at an ERP system, and you're trying to figure out what's best scenario for you, and now you're spending a lot of time analyzing. Whereas if you just started with Sage to begin with, you could turn on modules as you see fit. So it has a really great fit for even the smallest of startups who is willing to have their back office outsourced, or even if they were using Sage just as the first tool to begin with for their venture out into the business world.
I didn't realize that. That's really interesting. So the general perception is that a lot of people in the marketplace see Sage Intacct as like a mid-market ERP. What you're saying, though, is by being selective on only using a few of the modules, you can get the price down to the point where it makes sense even for a startup. That's
correct, and it's simple, easy to use, and it's cloud-based. So it's similar to a QBO Online, right? So, and you can start your whole venture out in the ERP in the cloud, so that therefore, you don't have to have a centralized people in the office. They can be anywhere. They can work from anywhere. The only piece that you really can't handle is the check cutting if you're still into that. I prefer to do everything online. Interact directly with the banks, and then upload a file so that it could release all the payments. So there's a lot of automation that you can handle with Sage that can save you a lot of time and headache. And as you grow, you don't have to worry about thinking about what ERP system you'll have to go to at that point.
So a lot of it sounds like good basic investment protection and avoiding the time, expense, and risks that come along with migration from one platform to another.
Correct. Yeah. Correct. And since we are we focus in cannabis as well, and they have a lot of different verticals that they operate in. They have and they do consolidations at the end, so that Sage actually does that really, really well within the system. Whereas you don't have to export it out into Excel and have intercompany transactions that you have to look at and doing all the eliminations. It does that for you within the system. So it handles those kind of things really well, and I would highly recommend people looking into it especially if they have multiple entities, multiple units, multiple locations, and things like that operates individually.
That's really interesting. So in most cases, would that be something that an entrepreneur would, or an early CFO or something, would take into account when they're balancing what to use and making a decision on software?
I think so. And they definitely should. They definitely should look at it, just especially if they have multiple units that they need to consolidate at the monthly, quarterly, or annual basis.
So this would be like divisions or different lines of business, different subsidiaries, correct, maybe within the U.S., outside the U.S.
Correct. And then if they have a holding entity that has to report on a consolidated basis, and so you just remove the need for Excel and the consolidations, doing it within Excel.
Yeah, that's a great tip. When I've spoken with other people before about Intacct, and they're talking about like how to know what reports to build next, it's like, take a screenshot of what you're doing in Excel and email it to me, and we'll get it in the list of stuff to do. Because I think there's people that are actually embarrassed that they have these Excel sheets and Google Sheets going, but yeah, at the end of the day,
Yeah, you got to do what works, right? I mean, Excel and Google Sheets, they both have beautiful graphs that you can create, and they update automatically. And especially with if you're graphing off of a pivot table, that pivot updates, and then you have everything else that updates. But if one link breaks, then you're spending hours modifying those reports, right? So, and then tracking down the broken link, the broken formula. So whereas if you're using Intacct, all those graphs, reports, everything, consolidations, all happens in one place, especially if you're grouping all the reports. You run report, and everything is spewed out, even with the documentation in the front. And then you can put it in and email it out to your client, saving a lot of time.
Gives you more time to spend time with clients, helping them.
That is correct. And
advisor,
actually, that's right. You can actually be the advisor versus just the processor, right? And that's the key element. And I spend a lot more time advising and looking at the numbers and what they actually mean versus here's the numbers, good luck. Because we only allowed 10 hours a month on this particular client, and that's what you wanted, and here's the report. Instead, I can actually generate the reports, process everything in the back end because Sage is so easy to work with, and then we have more time for analysis and the FaceTimes, which leads to other prospective business.
Yeah, it's another big theme I've been seeing across the board is using technology as the driver to get a lot of the basics taken care of automatically with integrations and eliminating time on data entry and reclassifications and recurring stuff in order to free up the time to really be the true outsourced CFO.
Correct. And I think that's one of the items that is kind of missed is the fact that you're a business partner and you have to help them understand what the numbers mean versus just providing the numbers.
Jayce, if you were to put your hat on for a moment as a product manager, thinking more of from a transformation innovation standpoint, where do you think your industry, where do you think public accounting, outsourced accounting is headed in the next 12, 24, 36 months? And has this changed dramatically in the last several weeks with COVID?
Well, I think a lot of the AI piece of it would be really, really beneficial, especially from the transactional processing standpoint. I think we can definitely leverage a lot of the machine learning and AI technology. And I think that will play a huge role in us playing business partners versus processors. I think you can get anyone to process, and machine learning and AI can definitely process items faster, quicker, and more accurately than, in most cases, humans can. And I think we can spend more time analyzing it versus actually processing it. And this way we can really, truly be the partner and be the consultant that adds value versus person that's just doing the processing and handing it off and having them do the analysis.
It seems like the technology and where we're headed with all these updates is the key to actually making this happen, as opposed to for the last 3, 4, 5 years, most people have aspirationally wanted to move in this direction. It looks like the software's finally caught up.
Yeah, and if you think about a lot of the other services that do the automated billing for you, until recently, until Vic.ai and different companies of such came about. I mean, most people were outsourcing into India or the Philippines, and there's actually somebody who's the AI sitting there in the cubicle working out the figuring out how to code it, where to code it, and it wasn't truly AI. And I think we've made leaps and bounds in that area, and I would love to see this area as it grows.
That makes a lot of sense. Jayce, any other parting words that you think would be especially helpful for somebody to know about Sage Intacct?
They are an easy company to work with, and they take their partner relationship very seriously. And if you ask for a particular update or a functionality that wasn't there before, you can pretty much see it in the next few revs that come out. And I am really happy to be working with them.
That's excellent. Jayce, if somebody has any questions on anything you talked about, wants to follow up with you or just wants to follow you, is there any particular place that you'd recommend on social media, either for you or for your firm?
Yeah, we're on LinkedIn as everybody else is, I think. It's www.linkedin.in/Jayce Kadire, Kadire. And I'm not sure where other places they can follow. I'm still trying to figure this out. I'm fairly new to MGO. I've only been here about 5 months now, and have been very busy taking over the Sage piece of the practice, and haven't quite figured out the social media and the marketing aspects of it. And so when you sent the notice, I was like, hey, this is great. This will be my, get my feet in the water, so to speak, instead of just diving right in. So I appreciate the effort that you're putting forth here.
You're very welcome. Actually, we look at education as a huge part of making this work, as you probably find with a lot of your clients. Is it probably isn't somebody that's up at 2 o'clock in the morning saying, gee, these reports are taking too long to do and it's really messing things up and I don't have enough time to spend with my clients or my team or recruiting or growing the business. But from when they work with someone like you and they've outsourced it and trusted that, you can say, hey, wait a second, I just found you another 4 hours a month every single month. What could you do at that time?
Right, absolutely. And I'm super excited about all the technology has to offer us going forward, and I'm glad to be here. It's exciting times.
Well, thanks so much, Jayce, for joining me today on our podcast. I wish you all the best and stay safe.
Thank you so much. Take care.
Take care now.
Thanks for listening to this episode of the AI in Accounting podcast. To subscribe and leave a review, check us out at blog.vic.ai or wherever you like to consume podcast episodes, including Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, and YouTube.